Hey guys, it's a steaming pile of ship here, and I've got a little bit of an older replay to use, or to show you rather. This was, I believe, one of the last games I played when 0.6.2 was live, or was the up-to-date version, I guess, of the game. And I didn't really have time to make a full video on this until now. So I basically went and I put the replay on and I had Shadowplay record it, and then I went and made a sandwich or something, did something else that I had or that I needed to be doing. But I really wanted to show this game off because it was a really fun game. I had a decent amount of well, this was before stealth firing was nerfed, but we have a cyclone moving in, so it wasn't nearly as much of a problem. And overall, it just was a fairly fun game. I am not using the build that I was using in this replay. I was actually testing out IFHE and Adrenaline Rush. Normally I run Fire Prevention and Expert Marksman. And you'll definitely be able to see some of the things that I don't like about the build that I was using in the video, and I'll be very vocal about them. But essentially, I hated being set on fire in more than one spot in the center of the ship. I didn't feel that the damage potential from Adrenaline Rush was enough to justify having my turrets turn so much slower. So I'm not using this build anymore. I think I only used it for 1 or 2 games before I switched back, but it was such a good game that I decided I had to show you guys anyways. We're heading towards A, and you'll see some HE shells streaking in over the island there, hitting us and setting us on fire for the first salvo that we take in the match, which is always really annoying. I don't want to repair it yet, because if we get spotted by a destroyer, the one that's capturing A will probably be immediately set on fire again, and potentially even flooded. Now I waited until right then to pop the hydro because I knew that it wouldn't really have the range to detect any destroyers, and I also was not spotted until right about then, so I figured, well, we'll go ahead and pop this now. That way any torpedoes in the water we see, and potentially if there's an IJNDD, we'll end up spotting them now. Enemy Iowa decides he wants to fire at us, and he's amusingly firing HE as well. He probably could do a fairly, well, I don't know, I'm giving him a fairly decent angle. He probably wouldn't have done much if he fired armor piercing, but I don't know, I always laugh. Even though I'll fire HE in a battleship sometimes, it's always fun to see battleships shooting HE at you. I don't know, there's something comical about it. We launched our scout plane, and it either looks like the Baltimore, friendly Baltimore to the right, or one of the planes that we've launched managed to spot him. I'm not quite sure, but he certainly is in hydro range, and we're going to manage to dodge these torpedoes, it looks like. Perfect fit, right? I didn't even have to turn. And here's one of the things, you'll see how slowly I'm turning to avoid being broadside to this Iowa here, but you just see how slowly these turrets turn while I'm unable to, or while I'm not using, rather, Expert Marksman. Wow, I can't talk today, I'm sorry guys. But I really don't want to be broadside to him because even though you can't really citadel me, he can do a lot of normal penetration damage, and it definitely, you notice when you're trying to angle up and still get a salvo off that it is much harder to do so when you don't have Expert Marksman. So that's one of the reasons why I've spec'd back. My secondaries are opening up on the Iowa. I had him designated on the Z46, but since he got undetected and I figured this Baltimore would be able to hopefully finish him off, I kind of said, well, let's start a fire on this Iowa maybe, but that's one of the things with the IFHE on there, nerfs your fire chance, and that's one of the things I don't like, that and the fact that you can't use fire prevention and also have a full secondary build as well if you're using IFHE, so definitely not something that I really thought was worthwhile after the fact. This battle, it worked really well for me, but ultimately I didn't like it enough to keep it. Now the Z46 managed to get around the island there, and I've got the Zhao designated right now for my secondaries, but pretty soon I'm going to designate him as the primary target for my secondaries. Go ahead and fire some rounds on him. We spread him out a little bit. I didn't quite know how fast he was going. It had also been, I think it had been about a month since I had played this ship at the time of this recording, so I wasn't quite used to the shell travel time. So I kind of wiggled it around to try and get at least one salvo to hit him, but yeah. I'm pretty much going straight at him right now. I don't want to eat any torpedoes, and you'll see that I don't have my hydro active right now. Well, I wanted to go for that Zao. I basically was waiting until the last moment possible before I went in turn to either use, or to both use the cover of the island for torpedoes, but also against this Iowa here and the Zao. I think in a second we might see some torpedoes that the Z-46 would have panic launched. Yep, there they are. But I really did not want to be broadside when those hit, so I was going to go straight as much as I possibly could, and then finally turn, and that's what I did, and it luckily worked out for us. Now that's unfortunate. I wanted to shoot the Zao, but he decided to stealth up, and that's going to be kind of annoying because he's probably going to pull back and try and stealth fire. Luckily, there's not too much time left before the Cyclone goes into effect, and like I say, this was one of the last games I played during 0.6.2, so stealth firing was, of course, still a thing back then. And we all know how annoying it is when the Zao stealth fires on you. I never really got as mad when it was like a destroyer stealth firing, like the Fletcher. Like, yeah, it was annoying, but he has such a terrible fire chance and such bad shell arcs that it was never really an issue. But when you get a Zao chunking you for 5,000 hit points and setting fires like no tomorrow, I can definitely see why they removed stealth firing. Enemy Iowa giving us just enough broadside that I'm not quite certain if I want to fire on him. And here's where Expert Marksman would have been really handy, because I would have almost had the turrets completely turned to that Zao. And yet, because I don't have Expert Marksman, I have to wait for them. And now the island's in the way. My indecision basically made me miss the opportunity to have a really good broadside target on him. When we do get him aimed at him, we do eat some of the island there with those shells, and it looks like they're not going to be very effective because he's already turned. Yep, one regular pen doesn't do that much. Iowa here starting to give broadside, and you will notice that the adrenaline rush has kicked in a tiny bit, I believe. The reload does seem a little bit shorter. I want him to give me a little bit more. It looks like he's going to. We're going to have to fire now, though, or else this island's going to be in the way, so we'll go ahead and shoot those off and hope we get lucky. Ooh. That was, I don't know if you guys watched that, but that dispersion looked amazing going in there, and it certainly felt good to smoke that guy like we did. I'm not going to repair just yet. Since the Cyclone has hit, I'm going to try and let it burn out a little bit more before we go ahead and repair, because if well, at this point it doesn't really matter too much, but essentially that Zao being back there with the Cyclone moving in, there might have been enough time that if the detectability went down, he might not have been able to shoot us again, and then we could have repaired the fire, although now it's pretty much a moot point. Designating the Udaloy here, although he's behind the island, so our secondaries aren't going to help us, and we think we cut that Amagi off, so sorry, friend. He's probably realized that something's amiss because he's detected behind the island, and it looks like there's smoke there too, so I'm not quite sure what he's about to do. If he moves too much further out there, though, that Amagi will have a shot on him, and he definitely might be taking that shot. Looks like he did. And it looks like he also missed. I don't want to fully notice around this island, though, with him so close. I kind of want to wait for him to peek around the headland just enough that I can get the shot off and kill him. And as well, we've managed to detect a gearing now. But if he goes around the corner, we might be able to use the front part of that island just enough to kill him. His gearing looks like he's about to get spanked too by the enemy, or by the friendly Lo Yang back there. Not if we can do anything about it, though. I'm not kill stealing, I'm kill securing, guys. Gosh. Designated I think the Yamato right here for it's kind of hard to tell, especially because since it's the replay file, I can't actually tell who it's designated, and they're really close, but looks like the Yamato. And they're pretty much ignoring me right here, and that's thanks to the Cyclone. They didn't know I was here until that. He's probably aware that someone's here now, but it's a little too late. We're going to get this rear turret spun up and firing as well, and then we're going to try and get some angle again. And amusingly, though we citadeled that guy 3 times, one with the first set of turrets and twice with the second set, it was actually the secondaries who managed to get the killing blow on the Yamato, so that's always fun. And we're going to start angling towards this Grosser Kurfürst, not only because we have to avoid hitting the island, but because just as you saw, or just as I think I was talking about it earlier, if you give a lot of broadside, you're not going to necessarily get citadeled, but you will take a ton of damage strictly from the all of the regular pens. But he went and fired already, so we'll get the guns on the rear in the way. And there's what I was talking about. That was like 16,000 plus like 6,000, which I'm not great at math, but that's what, 24,000 right there? And that wasn't a citadel, so I don't want that to happen to me, so we're going to get nice and angled again. And at this point, our secondaries are opening up on him, and his are opening up on us. He killed the friendly Montana right there, and we're not going to give him the broadside yet. We'll wait till he fires the second set, I believe. There, they're incoming, so now we'll start completely turning out, and pretty much bounces right there. And now we'll get that second, the rear turrets aimed at him, and you see, you can just chunk, you know, these German battleships, you can't really citadel them, but again, you can just chunk their health away by getting regular penetrations on them. And we finally managed to set our first fire of the game with the secondaries, and that's again one of the major reasons why I really was not huge on the IFHE, because I think secondaries ultimately are better for starting fires than dealing raw damage. And unfortunately, with IFHE, you pretty much nerf yourself. There's really not much that you gain from using IFHE, other than a little bit more penetration, but ultimately not enough for me to really want to give up the increased fire chance when we're in a brawl. Designating the Montana right there. And if you've noticed, we're out of heals down there, so I really can't afford to be taking much more damage. And ironically, while it took us that long to start our first fire, we easily start another fire on this Montana. And here's where I was not really wanting to shoot him. I fire at this Bismarck, and it looked like I know we set him on fire and killed him with a fire, but it almost, when I played the match, it looked like we killed him with like a shell going for the Bismarck hitting the Montana through the superstructure. It was kind of funny. I was confused at first, and I was like, oh. And this is definitely where IFHE does come into effect. And I definitely should have just aimed up. I was getting a little cocky and thought I could pen the guy. Should have just aimed for the superstructure. But this is where, you know, I don't have any hit points left, or not many hit points left in the grand scheme of things, so IFHE is certainly helpful right now. The more damage he does to me, the quicker my reload becomes, and the easier it's going to be to finish him off. Not that it's really going to matter much longer. We'll finish him off quite easily. He certainly should not have been showing that much broadside to me. If I were him, I would have probably gone for the ram. Don't really know what he was doing, but yeah. And since we know the Zhao was last spotted kind of near B, we're going to start moving towards there. I think the Cyclone is almost up. Yes, it just gave us a little 2-minute warning, so it's going to be back. And someone was complimenting me in the chat there, so I was like, haven't played the ship in weeks, it feels good to be back. Certainly a good game to return to my favorite ship in. Such a great game. 7 kills, high caliber, 2 close quarter weapons already. We might even be able to kill the Zhao. That'll really make it nice. Over 200,000 damage. Come on, give me a citadel or something already. This guy's been doing a lot of fire damage to me throughout this game, especially in the earlier portions. I really can't afford to have that happen much more. I'll let this one burn. If he sets me on fire again, though, I am going to have to put it out because I don't have any heals left, which is the major thing that... And, of course, he slows down. But that's the major danger. Get the Confederate award with those 3 overpens and the 1 regular pen, so that's always nice, too. We might have been able to citadel him had he not slowed down, but, yeah. Hindsight's 20/20. I guess if I'd have known he was slowing down, I would have dropped the, or put the crosshair a little closer to him, but he sped back up, and I'm going to wait for him to give me a little more broadside, but anymore, if we wait any longer, we might not end up getting the kill, so go ahead and send the rounds downrange and see if we get him. And we finally get the citadel we wanted at the end. So certainly a great game to have after not playing a ship for about a month or so. We did 225,000 damage. We got 600,000 credits rather, and just under 11,000 ship experience. We sunk 8 ships. We hit 6 citadels, and we got 245 hits with our secondary batteries, which is definitely a lot. Moving on to the team score, we topped the team unsurprisingly with the 8 kills and 2,374 base experience. We got the Fireproof Award thanks to that Zhao Confederate since we hit a bunch of people. Close Quarters Expert twice for killing that Yamato and the Z-46 with our secondaries. The Dreadnought and, unsurprisingly, the Kraken Unleashed, as well as High Caliber. Moving on, we did 175,000 damage with the main battery shells. Secondary battery, we did about 41,000 damage, and fires in total did 8,000 damage. I think we would have probably done a little less, like, straight up secondary damage with IFHE, or without IFHE, but we would have likely gotten more damage due to fires if we hadn't used IFHE, so that's one of the reasons why I have switched out. Although I still think 41,000 is a pretty decent number for just secondary guns. Certainly was nice. Worth noting, we tanked 170,000 damage, which is quite a bit. We pretty much used our repairs as much as we could, and definitely gave that Zhao a pretty high damage game just by letting his fires burn. So he definitely had a good game thanks to us, but we certainly had a good game on our own, so I'm not mad at all. Finally, the credit screen. In total, we only received about 417,000 credits, but, obviously we have repair costs and whatnot. And we do have the Type 20 camo, the Military Contributor Month flag, as well as other flags and things like that. And it was the daily win bonus, so don't look too much into the results or the credits and whatnot. They're not quite accurate as they could be, but certainly a great thing to have right there. Great results there. Great rewards. But anyways, let's go on to the build. So now that we're here in port, let's go ahead and go over the build that I'm using. Now I mentioned I was using a different build than in the game that you saw, but it's not terribly different, and I definitely think it actually works better. But let's go ahead and get into it. We'll start out, you do have a difference, or a different choice between guns here. You can either use a 406mm gun, which has a slightly better reload time, but realistically does less damage. I like to have the 420mm guns. I believe they have better penetration because they have a little more mass, and they do a little bit more damage, and really 2.7 seconds isn't a terrible price to pay. Moving on to the consumables, you're going to probably want everything except for the catapult fighter premium, starting off with damage control party, then repair party 2, and finally hydroacoustic search 2. In that order, I would say would be the order of importance, and then if you really want to, catapult fighter 2. Not really necessary, but it does help a little bit having the increased reload time on that, and since I have a ton of credits and I have the premium permanent camo on here, there's really no shortage of credits for me. Going to upgrades, I actually use Auxiliary Armaments Modification 1 on the ship because these turrets are fairly durable. I had them knocked out in that game, but you really don't have them knocked out often enough to for me to want main armaments mod 1. So instead, I've got the auxiliary armaments mod 1, which is going to help out my AA guns and my secondaries, of course. Moving on to the second slot, full secondary build here. So secondary battery modification 2. If you're not going for a secondary build, I would definitely get aiming systems modification 1 in this spot here. Third slot, main battery mod 3. That's going to help my main battery reload a little quicker. I guess I'm not technically a full secondary build because I don't have the secondary battery mod 3, but who cares that much. Slot number 4, damage control system mod 1. There's really no other choice for a battleship here because if you lose your steering or your engine, you're probably going to be repairing flooding anyways. Slot number 5, damage control system modification 2. You don't really need the steering gears as much because you have the hydroacoustic search, and it really is the giant turning circle of 1050 meters here. Did I just say 1000? 1050 meters there. Wow, guys, I'm sorry. But anyways, you're really hamstrung by that, so the steering gears mod 2 isn't a huge issue, a huge advantage rather. So go ahead and get damage control system mod 2 and just rely on, you know, as soon as you see torpedoes with the hydro, start turning then. Finally, I do run concealment system modification 1 because, well, I do have hydro, so there's no real need for target acquisition system mod 1. But realistically, you are much more benefited, I think, by having the stealth right here. That'll bring it down to about 15.9 kilometers, which is really, really handy. Previously, it didn't give Zhaos much room for stealth firing on you. Now that's obviously a moot point, but yeah. Definitely helps you get into position and surprise certain ships like other battleships that are not running concealment builds. Finally, I only have an 18-point captain. Well, only 18 out of 19, but I would start off with probably direction center for catapult aircraft. I'm going to go back and get preventative maintenance as soon as I can because it's really the only other choice as a battleship. And that will help prevent the incapacitation of my main turrets and engine and all that. So it'll be really nice to have that as well. Then you're going to want to go for expert marksman. At the time, or in the recording there, of course, I had adrenaline rush. I don't really recommend it because I just don't think it gives you that much of a benefit, especially since you need to be able to aim at the target in order to pull the trigger. So really having a faster reload if you can't get the turrets turned isn't going to matter anyways. In the third row, superintendent, get the extra heal, get the extra hydro, really, really handy to keep your survivability up. Finally, you're going to want to go for AFT, manual secondaries, and I went with fire prevention. Again, in that replay, I had IFHE, but again, I don't really see it as much of a use on a battleship. I certainly would have been much better off using fire prevention in that battle, and I think the fact that I got fireproof from that Zhao certainly shows that it would have been much handier to have this. But anyways, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed playing such an awesome and fun game, especially again after having not played this ship for quite a long time. So certainly was really nice to get back in the saddle in probably my favorite ship right here and have such a great result from it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. This is a steaming pile of ship signing off.